Well, let me be the next one to say it. Good morning, Obi-Wan. It's good to be with you guys today. My name is Chris. I'm one of the pastors here. It's my privilege to share with you. So let's start out with some questions for you to be pondering, but they're not deep ones. It's this confession time, okay? How many of you have been hungry enough that when you were at a restaurant and it took like 9 to 10 minutes to get your food, it felt like an eternity? Anybody? Yeah, all of us, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. It's only been like 3 minutes. What's wrong with me, right? Or how many of you, this is before GPS, right? How many of you got lost when you were on a road trip and you needed directions? Yeah, some of you. Why all, no guys' hands raised on the GPS, right? Guys Protection Services, protecting us from admitting that we're lost. How many of you didn't ask for directions and you got more lost? Yeah, thank God for GPS systems, right? Speaking of a road trip, guys, I don't know what it is. What is it about, like, we pass every bathroom and then that's when we have to go to the bathroom, and then it's like 50 miles before the next one, right? Or how many of you had that person that you had to go to the bathroom, you finally admit it, and they're like, we just went like 3 hours ago, what's wrong with you, right? Why are you raising your hand? Oh, she pointed it out, okay. Moving on. Let's just, go on to the next one, right? Hey, even some more serious ones. What about one where you moved, or you had a friend move, and then you realized that after a few months, like, man, I really need a friend. Or you had a career move, or you graduated from high school or college, and you just felt that was an exciting time, but you also felt directionless. You just needed direction in your life. What's the themes in these? Needs. And we all have them. And I just want to say this right from the start. Having needs doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. Did you hear that? Can you agree with that in your spirit today? Having needs doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. I mean, Jesus knew that we'd have needs. And his heart wasn't to shame us for having needs. Listen, this is so important, but to give us an outlet to talk to him about our needs. Did you hear that? His heart isn't to shame us for having needs. It's to give us an outlet so that we can talk to him about our needs. So he puts a principle in the Lord's Prayer to encourage us to connect with him about our needs. Listen to his words in Matthew 6. He starts out with this. This then is how you should pray. And just a reminder, Jesus does this so that we have principles that we can be learning. It's not for exact wording. I need to memorize this so I can repeat it over and over. There are principles in the Lord's Prayer that will help us, okay? So he says this, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. See, Jesus cares for, again, he's giving us an outlet right in the Lord's Prayer. He's giving us a principle, an outlet to say, hey, you can talk to me. I care about your needs. I want you to ask, and I want you to trust me to provide for you. So I want you to listen to this story about how he cared and provided for a really huge need. So just to give some context, Jesus saw a big crowd and he had the idea to feed them. And I love this about Jesus. You're going to find out in a minute why. So he asks one of his disciples, he says, where should we buy bread for these people to eat? Now, I want you to keep in mind, when I said big crowd, this crowd was at least 5,000 people, if not more. And so because the crowd was so big, the disciple responds with, probably a lot of us would too, right? Like, Jesus, I don't really know if you've seen the crowd, but just to give them a bite, not to have them eat fully, just to give them a bite, it would take half a year's wages. So let's put that into context for today. Let's just say average salary in San Diego is $70,000. The disciples were telling Jesus, it'd take $35,000 just to buy enough food for everyone to have a bite. It won't even, in other words, it won't even do what you set out for it to do. It won't feed everyone fully. Another disciple spoke up and he said, Jesus, there's this boy over here that has like 5 loaves and 2 small fish. Emphasis on the small, Jesus. Like, this isn't, like, no, this isn't going to happen. Probably not enough even for that boy. In fact, he even says, what good will that do? Now, I want to, just as we start to, dive into this a little bit more, I want to be transparent with you. I've had several times in my life where I've felt this way. And I want to share with you the one of the first times I felt like this in my life. Robin and I were married, we had kids, we had a house payment, we had bills, we had utilities. The adulting was full on at that point. And I remember walking into my leader's office, and he was crying and upset, not at me, but he was crying and upset at the situation, and he tells me to my face, we can't afford you anymore. We're going to have to let you go in the next several weeks. And guys, I was shocked. And thinking of like, house payment, married, kids, food, like all this stuff was coming, all of these problems were coming to my mind. And we're going to finish my story in a minute, but I want to get back to Jesus, whether Jesus feeding 5,000 or my story or your story. Here's what's cool about him. It says this in John 6. Actually, can you read it for me? I can't read right now. Read it for me so it gets into your spirit. Go ahead. Read it again. Get it into your spirit. Repetition's good. Go ahead. He already had in mind what he was going to do. He asked, you know why he asked his disciples? He wanted to see where their faith was. But he already had in mind what he was going to do. He already had a plan in place. So in this story, he had the people sit down, and then he gives thanks. And somehow, I don't know how the math works out. I don't know how the science works out. I don't know what he did. But somehow, through those 5 loaves and 2 small fishes that the disciple, reminded him of, he had enough for everyone to be full. Not just a bite, and there were leftovers. He already had in mind what he was going to do. In fact, some of you need to write that down or type that into your phone, because that's where you're at right now. You're like, I don't have any idea what he's going to do. But he already has in mind what he's going to do. To finish off my story, I'm not pretending it wasn't a difficult time, because we really did have a house payment. We really did have kids. Those weren't fake, right? They were real. They were eating food in our home during that time, turning on lights when we needed to turn them off. I'm not saying it wasn't a difficult time. But he already had in mind what he was going to do. And he used that hard situation to propel us into a next level ministry for us. Why? Because he cares about us, he cared about our needs, and he already knew what he was going to do. Now, I share that story. I've actually had more difficult times and longer times where we've had oh my gosh, what are you going to do, God? But the reason I share that is because it was one of the first times when faced with responsibility, again, house payment, married, kids, where I've experienced God providing when I had no idea what he was going to do. But that's the point. I had no idea. You may have no idea. He knows. And this is why we can trust him. Jesus cares, and he already has in mind. He already has a plan in place. And again, I'm not pretending. I know the in-between is hard. As I said, I've been there many times, but Jesus can be trusted with your in-between. In fact, you might want to write that down. Jesus can be trusted with my in-between. He's not caught off guard by your situation. He cares about your situation and already knows how to handle it. So let's get personal. What's a current need you have? I really want you to think about that for a moment. I'm going to give some examples so that gets your mind thinking, but think about what's a current need you have. Maybe for some of you, it's financial. Maybe for some of you, it's relational. Maybe for some of you, it's a career decision. Maybe for some of you, you need some direction in life. For some of you, it might be a health need. I don't know what it is, but what's a current need that you have? Now, as we've been doing throughout this series, because this is a Talk with God, this is a Connect with God series, we're going to just stop right in the middle of this message so that you can connect with God. Because how many of you know one word, one sentence from God beats 100 messages? So let's just connect with God about that. All of us have a need right now, no matter what it is. So why don't you take a few minutes to connect with God about a need. Remember, obviously, to thank him as well for things as well. So you take a minute or two just to connect with God. Isn't it awesome that he already knows what he's going to do? Even if you haven't seen it yet, he cares and already has a plan. Even if he hasn't revealed that plan yet, he can be trusted. Now, back to the story about Jesus. The next day, this is so neat, the next day, the crowd that he fed the day before came back. And who could blame them? Maybe they want, that would have been a neat miracle to see, how does he keep providing out of these two small fishes? Are they getting a half an eyeball, or, what's going on here? How is he doing this? It would have been neat to see that miracle. They probably wanted to be fed again, too. This is cool. If you can multiply food, let's do it. So they come back to him the very next day. This time, though, Jesus turns the conversation to spiritual matters of the inner person. So listen into John 6. This is what he says to the crowd. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval. So they ask him, hey, what's the work God requires us to do? We want to know, what's this work that you're talking about that God requires us to do? And Jesus answers in the next verses. He says this, the work of God is this, be ready for it. I want you to hear it. You know why? So that if you ever hear, you have to earn yourself before God, you have to work before God, you have to earn favor before God. Anytime you hear that, you're tempted in your spirit to go there. What's the work of God? Help me. To believe. To believe. Now, this isn't the main part of the message, but I want to pause for a reminder. This is like the commercial to the message, right? Here's another saying from Jesus that shows us we can't earn our way to God. It's not about the good we do. The work God requires is believing in the one who's already done the work for us. His work, not ours, makes us right with God. By grace, through Jesus, by faith alone. Amen. By grace, through faith in Jesus alone. Okay, back to your regular broadcasting services or whatever they used to say, right? Back to Jesus and the crowd. They get into a conversation about bread, which is interesting. I love this about Jesus. This is one of the things that he actually gave them at their meal yesterday, was bread. And so they get into this conversation about bread, and then he has this to say about bread. In John 6, he says this, "For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." They're starting to get excited. There's bread from heaven that can give life to the world? So they're like, "Sir, always give us this bread. We want this bread. We want life." So now they're intrigued. Wow, there's actual bread from heaven that can give life to the world, that can give life to me. Jesus, don't withhold. Please give us this bread that you're talking about. Listen to what he says next in John 6. Then Jesus declared, it's one of his I am statements. Hey, you're looking at him. You're looking at him. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. You see, the day before, Jesus shows people that he cares for and can be trusted to provide for their physical needs. Today, and hopefully maybe for some of you today as well, today, in that moment, he was showing them that he cares for and can be trusted to provide for their spiritual need. And Jesus wants to and can give life to our spirits, life to our souls. And we might not want to admit it, but we all have spiritual needs. And I'll remind you from the beginning, having needs does not make us weak. It just makes us human. And Jesus is the bread, the sustenance for our spirit's needs. In fact, let me give some examples. Humans sometimes, we don't like to admit it, but sometimes as humans, we fear and we worry. We fear about the world. We fear about one individual person's opinion of us. We worry about the stock market. We fear financial stuff. We fear the unknown. As humans, sometimes we have the propensity for fear and worry. And Jesus, being the bread of life, can feed our spirits with peace. Or sometimes as humans, we get discouraged. Show of hands, adulting's hard, isn't it? Yes. It's hard. It's discouraging. And sometimes it takes the life out of us. And Jesus, being the bread of life, can feed our spirits with courage. Or take unhealthy anger. There's nothing wrong with anger, but when it gets unhealthy and we start lashing out at ourselves or lashing out on other people, when that happens, Jesus can feed us with self-control. He's the bread of life. Or when confusion happens, we're directionless, we're confused by life, we don't know where to go. Jesus, being the bread of life, can feed us with clarity. Or when we're trapped by life, overwhelmed. We just said that adulting can be hard, right? When adulting gets overwhelming, the bread of life can feed us with freedom. But for some of us, we're just weary. We're just tired. Maybe not even anything really bad is happening. We're just tired. And Jesus, being the bread of life, can feed us with refreshment. Guys, this is why it's so important to connect with him. This is why it's important to not just, like, every once in a while when we see the Lord's Prayer, just formally repeat it. This is why it's important to connect with him, because as we connect with him, he can give us what our spirit needs and what our spirit's hungry for. You see, when we fear and worry, it shows us that we're starved of peace, and he can fill us with peace. When we're discouraged, it shows us that we're starved of courage. He can fill us with courage. When we're confused, it shows that we're starved of clarity. Jesus can fill us with truth that brings clarity and sets us free. But here's the thing. Just being transparent. Sometimes when people have a spiritual need, whether it's showing itself through fear, worry, confusion, discouragement, whatever, they're ashamed that they have that need. So they don't come to Jesus. Because they see things in Scripture like do not fear or do not worry, and they're like, crap, that's exactly what I'm doing. God didn't put that in there so that we could feel guilty about that. He put that in there to remind us, you have a need, the bread of life can fill it. But we get ashamed. More transparency? Do you know who can more often get ashamed? When you've been longer in Jesus. Isn't that weird? Like, you know why? Because we're like, I should be over this by now. I've been in Jesus for 9 years, or like I've been in Jesus for 30 years, and I've been dealing with this for 5. I should be over this by now. Listen to this. This is so important to hear. If this is like one of the only things you hear, listen to this. We never outgrow our need for God. Never. Never. I actually hope that's freeing to you. We never outgrow our need for him. Now, don't hear me wrong. It doesn't mean that we can't overcome something in our lives. We can with the help of Christ, but we have to remember who helped us overcome? The bread of life. Also, even when we overcome something, Pastor Julian talks about this quite a bit. It's like onions, right? We keep peeling, and we're like, oh my gosh, now I have another spiritual need. And then we keep peeling, and the tears start to flow because it's onions, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, I have another spiritual need. He's the one that gives us spiritual vitality. We will never outgrow. It doesn't matter if you've been a Christ follower for 6 months or 54 years. We will never outgrow the need for the bread of life. A spiritual need shouldn't shame us. It's not an awareness to beat ourselves up or to feel condemned or to look down on ourselves. It should just be a reminder, I need the bread of life. I need Jesus. Because, again, he can turn a fearful spirit into a peaceful spirit, a bitter spirit into a spirit of self-control, a spirit of discouragement into a spirit of courage, a spirit that's weary into one that's refreshed and restored. God, please help give me my daily bread today. God, I have physical needs that I'm asking you to provide for, but I also know that I need the bread of life. Jesus, Jesus, there's physical needs that I have, but I need you today. I need you today for my spirit. See, some only pray for physical needs, thinking that those are met, that it will completely help their spiritual need be met. And I've done that before. But while meeting our physical needs can help our spirits and refresh us, Jesus is the only one who can completely help our spirits. He is the only one. So let's get personal again. What's a current spiritual need you have? Think about a current spiritual need you have. Because it's so important that we have an outlet to go to Jesus with our physical needs. We just don't want to get stuck there because we have spiritual needs that we have too. And so what's a spiritual need you have? I'll just give some examples to the ones we talked about today, but it could be anything. For some of you, maybe you need some peace. It's just been really chaotic lately. He's the bread of life. He can give you peace. Maybe for some of you, you're discouraged. He's the bread of life. He can give you courage. Maybe you're finding your temper is a little bit more out of control and you're starting to lash out. You don't need to feel bad about having that spiritual need. If you lashed out to someone, you might need to apologize. But you don't need to feel bad for that. Jesus, I need your self-control. Some of you may be confused. Guys, I've been there. One of the only ways I know how to follow God is when I have clarity. And I remember a very confusing time in my life where I was in a student chapel and I was just talking to God, and I just remember him giving me this visual of like, that's okay, I just need you to hold on to me. And he gave me this visual of holding on to the roller coaster. He's like, it's gonna feel fast, it's gonna feel like twists and turns at times, but you just hold on to me. It's okay. We have spiritual needs. Or again, we're freedom. Like we're trapped by something. Sometimes, guys, life can even be good, but just the monotony of it. Get up, do it again, get up, do it again. We get trapped by that sometimes, and the bread of life can feed us freedom. Or again, some of us are just weary. There might even not even be a lot of struggles going on. You're just tired. The bread of life can refresh you spiritually. So as the worship team comes out, I want you to take a few minutes to connect with God about your spiritual need. Take a moment or two to, God, I have this need. And then as you do, thank Jesus for being the bread of life. So the worship team is going to give you a couple minutes to connect with God, and then they'll lead us in song. But go ahead, guys, start connecting with God.